Before we put any dye down on this, I'm going to come through with my stitch groover, and I want to get a stitch grooved in here. Now the reason I do this, it's going to be a place where that thread's going to sit down in when I stitch this off. And the reason I'm doing the groove before I dye it is because I really want that dye down in that groove. Because if we dye first and then groove it, you'll get down to that natural leather color, and it'll be kind of a bright glow behind that stitch. Or if you happen to miss at all on your stitch, it would show up there as well. So we don't want that. I want to get that dye right down in there. So now with that stitched up, we can head over to the dye table and talk about getting an even dye coat on this. Dyeing an even color can be super hard, especially with any lighter colors, but I'm going to show you a trick that I like using, or it's how I get as even a color as I do, although it's not perfect. It's what I've found to work really well. And one thing for applying the dye is these little foam chip brushes. And I really like these. They're, I keep them as more of a disposable type of brush. I use it for a while. I keep it with this color. You can see this is one that's been used before. If they finally get too deteriorated, I throw them away and get another one and get started with, but they last for a while. My dye, I'm using the Phoebe's walnut color dye. I just have it put in this wider mouth jar so I can get at it easier. So we'll open that up. One thing with these chip brushes, they do hold a lot. So I'll get it dabbed in there, start getting that soaked up. But I like to run that off on the edges a little bit too, so we're not just dripping and sopping wet. Gives us a little bit more control that way. Now it's important when I lay this dye down to look at how dark that leather's getting when it first hits there. Because as that leather absorbs the dye and it starts drying, it's going to lighten up. But I'm going to work my way through this project, and I want to keep things as even as possible. So I want to be putting things down at a consistent rate and not necessarily looking back to where it's lightening up, and I don't want to instantly go back and start darkening that to even that out, because then I'm laying too much in one spot. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to show you here. So I'm working my way around and just getting right down in around those border stamps. I'm just going to work my way across here. You can see I'm getting that solid dark color there. Not that, that's still light. I'm getting it dark the first time I go across here. Nice and even and dark all the way across. You can see not here yet because it's still my first go at it and it was still light. We're laying quite a bit down here. And as we're going, we're going to start noticing that back here where we started is going to start getting lighter. All right. Now, as this is starting to get lighter here, I'm not wanting to go back and start touching up and getting it super dark like that. The only spot is right on these edges here. I can see where I missed a couple little spots. So I'm just going to come right around that edge to even that there. But in here where it's starting to lighten, I'm not messing with that at all, because if I go back right now and start trying to add dye, where it looks like it's lighter, then we're actually going to be putting more dye in that spot where I just went down and laid it down all even. Because it's lightening up in certain spots, that means that leather's absorbing it right there a little bit quicker, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's less dye in that spot. If I went back and started touching up, then we're going to wind up being really splotchy. So the best thing I can do at this point is to let that sit. Let it sit, let it dry, let that dye do its job and kind of get absorbed into that leather a little bit. We don't have to, you know, it's up to you. You don't have to necessarily let that sit overnight or 24 hours or things like that. I'm going to watch as this goes here, and our next step is going to be to come back over top with that oil, and that's going to help even it out even more. But I'm going to probably let this sit a little while. It won't be completely dry yet when we come back and add our oil, because that oil is just going to grab it and help evenly disperse all that dye anyhow. So I don't know, we'll give this a little bit of time here. Let's give it you know, 10-15 minutes. I'm going to come back and check and see what that looks like and how fast that's absorbing in there. And different factors are going to play into that: temperature in the room, airflow, dryness of your leather initially, all that stuff. So we'll come back and check on this and get ready to put some oil on it when it's a little bit further dry than it is now. Now that this has been sitting for 10-15 minutes, you can see how it looks like it's dry and splotchy, because it's still dark in places, lighter in others, but you can tell kind of the process, it's starting to even out as that is drying and being absorbed into the leather. What we're going to do now is going to go ahead and add a light coat of oil on this, and then let that do its job as this is finishing evening out. So just using the pure neat's foot oil and a little scrap of sheepskin I like putting that on with. We're going to work in kind of little circles here and just get a nice light coat on here. Working in those circles, make sure that we're getting it on even, not big streaks of it. Now that's going to help even everything out. Now if you're just continuing on looking at this project, finishing out, you know, you could watch it, see exactly how much time that's going to take. It's going to vary. You know, the earlier you come back with our next finish process, it's going to hold that color a little bit different. But we're getting in today here in the shop where I'm at when I'm actually filming here. So I'm going to let this sit overnight. It's going to even out really nice. You're going to see a little bit of irregularities when that dries out, because you have to remember this is not a synthetic piece. It's not a completely even medium that we're using. It's leather, it's hide, it's part of an actual animal. So there's going to be a little bit of inconsistencies in there, and that's part of the neat thing with that dye. It's going to bring out some of that natural kind of patina in the leather itself. So we will see a little bit of that as it dries, but for the most part, this is going to even out and get to be a really nice, cool color and allow us to antique over that. So I'm going to let that sit overnight, and we'll see how that looks when we come back in the shop in the morning, and we'll finish this project out.